What's up? It's Monday morning. I'm just leaving CrossFit. I'm in this crappy X1 rental because our X5 finally has the air conditioning unit come in. They said it might have taken up to a year, which is kind of ridiculous, but it came in. It was only a couple months. Perfect time for winter. But this SUV sucks. It's an X1. I thought X1s were relatively newish. Everything about this thing is god awful. Sorry, I'm really out of breath. There's no reverse camera, so I had a big truck just parked beside me right there. I had no choice but to just start backing out and hoping that there's no traffic coming, because you just can't see anything. Either that or I just wait for him to go. But he just parked at this store that I was parked at, so pretty crappy. Got a couple things I want to talk about today. I'm going to reserve the the rantier conversation for the drive to work because it probably needs a little bit more time. I figured I'd use the morning drive here because it's a little shorter back from CrossFit to talk about kind of what's been going on and just a little status update. So step one is catch my breath. And no, this weekend was good. We in Brand Ghost, we had this bug where our scheduling, I think I described this on one of the previous videos, our scheduling of recurring posts is anchored to UTC time, which is in my entire time as a software developer, I have only ever seen anchoring things and storing them relative to UTC. And then you kind of translate to a user's time zone right before putting it to the user interface. I've always seen it this way. It's always worked. And this is different because you do want it anchored to the user's time zone. And the reason for that is when they switch, their time zone enters daylight savings time or goes out of it, they expect their posts to go out at the same time that they normally would. And because we anchor to UTC, it will shift by an hour. So this is currently broken in Brand Ghost, in the production site. But I sent out an update to users. Their posts and stuff will still go out. It's not catastrophic. But everything, depending on your time zone, will be off by an hour. So the UK folks were already affected by this because their time changes the week before. Users in Pakistan should not be affected at all because I believe they don't have daylight savings time. Lucky them. And then a bunch of folks in the Americas are impacted. But again, it's an hour. The very easy fix that I explain to users is hey, just open up the app and then just go to where your topic streams are. And people only have a few of these, and basically just change the time again. And that'll basically buy you a window of time until the next daylight savings time change. But the good news is I do have a fix for this. And I wrote a newsletter article on this, but it's a little bit more complicated to roll out than just the fix. And I'll explain what I did, how it's been successful so far, and then kind of what we have to do going forward. Because I think this is the newsletter I wrote about it touches on why real world software development has all sorts of interesting constraints that you don't get exposed to, especially if you're just doing lead code style things. Don't get me wrong, time and place for that, especially if you're practicing for interviews. It's not what I would recommend people spend all their time doing because you're not getting a real world exposure. Now, even if you're building little projects, and when I think that's way more valuable than doing lead code just for practice overall. But the closer it is to being real world, I'm not saying you need to have paid for users. That's practicing business stuff. Sorry, these mirrors are everything about this thing, man. Like the mirrors, if I look into the mirror, it's like it shows me what's beside the car, but even to my left, I have a blind spot. Like I can't trust the mirror. So that's why I keep like looking left and right aggressively, because I can't see what's going on. But yeah, the closer stuff is to real world, the more interesting constraints that you have to practice with. And this time zone thing is a perfect example, because the actual fix to make the system compatible with a configurable time zone per user is very simple. Within a couple of hours of identifying the challenge and working through the problem, I had it locally on my machine fixed and functionally tested with scenarios across different time zones, different times of the year, and spanning these different moments where you would gain or lose hours from daylight savings time. So, and that's not like, I'm not trying to say like it's because I'm so good. I'm saying it's because like when you don't have constraints, like how is this going to work for real users? Like you can solve problems much easier. There's fewer challenges to look through. So again, it's not bad to practice this way, but the more realistic the challenges are, the better practice. I should also mention I'm completely out of water, and I can feel like my mouth is like almost not working. So it's going to be a struggle. Okay. The fix, like I said, I talked to the other developers. We didn't just want to roll it out because the scheduler in our system is like one of the most critical pieces. When the scheduler is not working, literally no one's posts go out. When the scheduler is operating incorrectly, we risk double posting or missing posts. Like it's arguably right now the most critical part of our entire system, next to just the database itself, and like we don't want to lose people's content, which by the way is backed up daily. So we have historical records of it. Like unless all of Azure goes down, or there's something at Microsoft or whatever that's an issue, there's no issue with losing people's content. So what we decided to do is, instead of just saying, hey, let's turn on this new scheduler, we said, well, why don't we run both? We'll keep the old one running so that no one's disrupted, and we'll run the new one in like a log mode. And it's pretty cool because this way we can, in our logging, we can check like what did the first scheduler pick up and what did the second one pick up. And every time they fire, we should see that they have the exact same behavior. And that's because by default, no one has time zones configured. So the default behavior is that everyone is anchored to UTC, even with the new scheduler. So it is a really cool experiment, right? You turn both on, one in logging only mode, the other one actually wired up, and the results that you should see in the logs is that the schedulers have identical behavior. So we did this and we ran it for 24 hours and everything was perfect. Okay, next step. Let's have Nick, that's me, let's have Nick actually set up his time zone configuration. Man, this person doesn't have their lights on. I've mentioned this on videos before, but people driving on the highway when it's dark out without lights is batshit crazy to me. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. I can't wrap my head around it. But so on the second day, I set a couple of my topic streams, not all of them. So the point of me explaining this is like that we're staging, seeing how we can get this rolled out. So I set up a couple of my topic streams to be allowed through on the new scheduler, and I set my time zone. So the old scheduler will pick up all of my topic streams like normal, but it will ignore the couple that I've switched, and the new one will only pick up the couple that I've switched on, and we ran this and it worked. So we were able to prove, okay, using the new scheduler, it's not just that it's logging properly, but we can truly wire it up and it will post and do the correct thing based on the time zones. Now, there was a bit of a hiccup the first time through this, and it was pretty scary because I said I configured 2 topic streams to post this way. The first one did not fire. And I was out at Costco with my wife, and then I looked at my phone and I was like, oh, it's time to check to make sure it worked. Didn't work. So I'm sitting there going, okay, either my sort of test code to go hook this up had a bug, or a worse problem. And that worst problem is that we're using time zones in SQL. What I mean by that is the name of the time zone. Now, this is something new for me. So, because like I said, it's always been anchored to UTC. Never had a reason to work with time zone names like this. Sorry, I'm falling apart right now. That car's loud. So the crazy thing is this all worked locally. I was running MySQL in a VM on my machine. Works. But when I checked and ran the query manually against production, it's saying that there's no results for the schedule when it's supposed to be firing. And it turns out that the behavior by default for an Azure SQL instance is to not load time zones. I don't know why that's the case. I'm sure there's a very good reason. But basically, if you tried to do any operations and do a time zone conversion, the convert time zone method would just return null in SQL. These guys got me boxed in. You gotta hurry up, buddy. You gotta hurry up. This is crazy. There's a huge truck beside me. Oh my God. Sorry, I need to think, so I can't speak. This is also the problem with, I should try to explain this briefly. When you're used to driving cars that are a little bit zippier, so the AMG GT is pretty zippy. When you're used to driving a car like that, I don't drive like an idiot. I don't like to speed aggressively. I get uncomfortable, but I do like to be able to accelerate. And the reason that I like to be able to accelerate is 1, it's fun, but 2, if I need to get somewhere, if I'm looking where I want to be on the road, all that I have to do is make sure it's clear, and then I know that the car is able to do it. In a vehicle like this, I can see an opening, I can put my foot down, and then I have this gamble of can the vehicle even do it? And that's not a position I want to be in. I just want to be I know the vehicle can, let's go. So in a moment like that where I only have 10 seconds to go do a lane change to get off the highway and I'm in the far left, I don't want to be thinking about that. Okay, so time zones, Azure SQL, default. They're not there. Fortunately, there's a 1-line command that you can run that loads them up. Glad I found that, because if that wouldn't have worked, we'd be in a pretty bad spot, because the challenge is I could do time zone conversions based on the offset from UTC, using a number, but that will not help us with daylight savings time. We need the logic to be able to support a given time zone and support how it's supposed to translate based on daylight savings time. So again, very fortunate that I found that command, loaded them up, everything started working. Which brings me to the next phase, which is I think we can turn on the new scheduler by default because we've proven that it just works, which is cool. But because I am the only person with a time zone set, I need to adjust all of my topic streams to be in that time zone. And that should be a good next test. So I think maybe this evening we will roll that out, which is cool. And then beyond that, now we have this interesting migration path, right? So at this point in time, any single user that registers, literally right this moment, the time I'm recording this, if they register and they make topic streams, they will be anchored to UTC. Everything will be fine until daylight savings time, which means the more users we're onboarding, which we want to keep doing, the more sort of surface area this problem has, because every single user that's onboarding at this point will be anchored to UTC. So what we need to do is start getting time zones from users when they register, making that their default time zone, right? So if I'm in Pacific time and I register, we would want to at least have that be the default, at least, because anchoring stuff to the time zone I'm in will at least be explainable later. If someone was like, hey, wait, no, like I was between Pacific and Eastern for work travel, like, sure, no problem. Just switch your time zone now that we put it into the app to be Eastern and everything will just work. But the challenge is we just don't have that setting in the user interface. We just don't have that concept yet. So we need to start building that out and snapshotting users' default time zones. And that way, if they're like, hey, look, like, hey, Brand Ghost devs, it's posting at the wrong time. And we can say, hey, look, no, like, check your configured time zone in the settings. And then they can say, oh, like, you know, when I registered, I was visiting Seattle, I was in Pacific time, but I'm actually from Central. So we would say, yep, just change your preferred post, your target posting time zone into being like Central, and everything will just be fine. So we need a migration strategy in the user interface for that. And then ideally some automation, but I might have to do it by hand to migrate users like posting times, because the data's got to get migrated, right? Like in the database, it's literally anchored to UTC. So something we could do is like we could introduce this time zone setting for all the users and put it to UTC. And then if they're like, hey, it's posting at the wrong time, I would have the same conversation with them where I say, like, yeah, it's because it's anchored to UTC. Like you want it to post in Eastern, like no problem, just change that setting where you see UTC to being Eastern and it'll fix. So we'll have to do that, maybe communicate it to the users. But fortunately right now the user base is small enough and tight-knit enough that like this is embarrassing, it's awkward, but like we got to do it. It's kind of like you do it or you give up, right? Like, so we got to move forward and we'll do it. So if people can't deal with that, like, I don't know what else we can do. Is like, we just have to be able to offer, in my opinion, we have to be transparent, right? I've already I've sent out communication to the users telling them this weekend, if you have a time change, expect that you're going to be an hour off. I gave them an update saying we have, you know, code to fix this. I tried to explain it's going to be a rollout strategy and we'll make it right. But unfortunately, this is life and this is a complexity that we have to deal with in the system. So it's not trivial. And, you know, I appreciate people being patient. A lot of people are on their trials. The product's in its early stages. So there's bugs in every software. I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but like, we're going to make it right. People have been really good about giving us feedback, whether it's a typo or something they don't even expect to happen, or they want something, or it's truly just not functioning. So all that we can do is, in my opinion, is keep listening to customers and keep being transparent. What I would hate to do is like just pretend like there's no scheduling issue and then have this influx of people being like, hey, like, why is this posting at a weird time now? We don't want that. Like the first person that brought it to us was in the UK, and it's because their time change was a week before us. And they said, hey, I'm noticing, like I think they said something didn't post. And then an hour later, they're like, hey, it posted, but an hour late. And then it was like, wait a second, time change, right? That's what sparked all of this. So like, it's good. We have really good users giving very clear feedback. And we don't want to lose that. So that's why I think it's important that we remain transparent with them. I think like one of the things, if I may say so, because it feels like based on the feedback this is true, I think one of the things that we are doing very well is we react very fast. So, for example, John Vandeveer, who runs Latterly.io as a content creator, he did like a 50-minute live stream of like, I haven't watched the whole thing. One of our developers did. He did like a 50-minute live stream where he was onboarding to Brand Ghost, entering like his content, and he was sending me messages being like, hey, like there's a typo here. Hey, like what about this? What about that? Like this stuff is awesome. Like that's what we want. And this is over the weekend, and people like devs are, you know, spending time with their family and stuff. It's the weekend at their cottages. Like as you might expect, they have a life to live too. No one's doing this full time for now, and we still at like, you know, around midnight Eastern, we're still landing fixes. So like when you give us feedback, we are reacting to it immediately. We're at least talking about it as soon as it comes in. And I think that when we can demonstrate that to users, they know we give a shit. So we'll keep that up. Next video on the drive to work will be a rant. If you like rants, stay tuned for that. I'll see you next time.